Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. And of course, as it is every other week, it is time for the cats because, cats. Which is, the answer to everything involving cats is the phrase, because cats. So today, before we start talking about the book at all seriously, because I don't actually own a copy of this one, I had to take it out of the library, and because of various exigencies about my current location and where I work and things like that, I wasn't able to get a physical copy, so that meant that I had to download a cover off of the internet, which, I've done several times. You've all, well, if you bothered, I doubt anybody has. I usually point out where I got the particular picture of the cover from if I cadged it from online. So I was looking for covers, and I found this thing, which I will take a moment to zoom in on so that you can see it better. It is Grumpy Cat and Cheese and the book, The Cat Who Said Cheese, which, for the record, is one of the titles in this series. I do like Grumpy Cat. Who doesn't like Grumpy Cats? Well, I mean, there are people who don't like grumpy cats. Most of them don't like cats. Okay, so The Cat Who Said Cheese. The thing about this book, this particular title, is that I've said it before, Cat Who books, the titles are sometimes a little tangential to the actual point. This one, the title is definitively tangential to the point. I mean, yes, some of Qwillerin's clues come in the form of Coco yowling when he names particular cheeses in passing for reasons. I suspect most of those reasons are Coco is a cat. But other than that, cheese really doesn't have anything to do with it. There's a woman who has been abused by her husband who has fled to Pickaxe, and when she finds out her husband has followed her there, she runs away, not before he manages to literally blow up the hotel she was staying in, killing a nice young woman and throwing everyone into a tailspin, because seriously. There is a woman who decides that she's going to take all the credit for her son's shiitake mushroom farm, because she's one of those people who just has to have all the glory for herself and take credit for everything. Not to mention she stole Mrs. Cobb's cookbook, which has been an ongoing thread throughout the series ever since Mrs. Cobb's book got stolen several books back, because right after Mrs. Cobb died, she left her cookbook to Qwillerin in her will, mostly as a joke, because everybody knows that while Qwillerin loves food and loves talking about food and loves eating food, he doesn't cook. Indeed, in this book, Qwillerin attempts to cook and in the process discovers that somebody has hidden a handgun inside the turkey, because somebody gave him a frozen turkey, and after having seen Mildred Hanstable demonstrate how to cook one, and decides, well, that looks easy enough, as everyone who has ever made a turkey will attest. Totally the easiest thing ever. And he figures, oh, it'll be easy enough, and then he tries to defrost it, and eventually, in the process of, taking out the giblets and things like that, discovers that somebody had shoved a handgun up the turkey. One suspects not while the turkey was alive, nor indeed in moments very soon after its death, probably after a certain amount of emptying out had been done, because, ew. But therein ends Qwillerin's, I believe, last attempt in this whole series to do any cooking that doesn't involve a microwave. There is a beekeeper who, bees, honey. He is an unfortunate guy who was in the Navy and fell off a ship and suffered some kind of horrible trauma in the process. Not really surprising. And also some kind of cognitive disability followed up on that. And yeah, he's been kind of out of it and not fully legally capable ever since. But he likes his bees, and he's a nice guy, and And, yeah. So there's bees and there's honey and there's a turkey, and the cheese is really, really coincidental to the main plot. The other big thing that happens in this book is Polly Duncan's recovery. I mean, yes, there's a murder that happens, and Qwillerin investigates it and finds out that it was an accident, and then there's an implication at the end of the book that the beekeeper guy might have actually done him in, but, you know, who's going to actually, like, accuse the poor guy of anything, since, you know, he was just glad not to wind up having to kill some poor woman who didn't deserve it. But anyways, Polly, in previous books, wound up having a heart attack. Partly brought on by unhealthy living, and partly... Now, by unhealthy living, I just mean that, you know, she ate a lot of fatty foods and didn't get a lot of exercise. Kind of like me. Not that, you know, she spent all of her time smoking or anything like that. She just, you know, fatty foods and no exercise. Anyways, but partially brought on by the stress of trying to, you know, design and construct a house all on her own, even though she is a highly intelligent librarian, not well skilled in house building. We all have our skills, and house building wasn't really one of hers. Anyways, but I talked about that last time, you know. I wonder how I construct a berm. How about you talk to somebody who went to local, you know, college landscaping school and learned how to construct them, and he'll make you a berm because he knows how to make them. But anyhow, this particular book takes place during a brand new big event in Pickaxe, the so-called Food Explo. The idea, of course, being that it's a big exposition all about food. There will be, you know, cooking contests and pasty contests. That's pasty spelled the same as pasty, only pronounced differently because it is a pastry and not, like, pale, sickly thing. Pasties are, of course, a real thing. You can look them up. They're, you know, pastries stuffed with meat and potatoes and things. Anyways, so there's all of that, and so there's a lot more food in this book than the last one. Indeed, in many of the books, for a while, I think partly because Qwillerin didn't have a particular cook for several books who he was relying on, so we didn't have a Richard Mouse, we didn't have an Iris Cobb, we didn't have Polly Duncan. So this book kind of brings us back to Qwillerin's roots of, let's talk about all the food ever. So there's a lot of food in this one. And I think the biggest thing that's going on in this is, you know, is that there are two major mysteries that kick in this. At first, there's the lighthearted mystery of who is the mystery woman staying at the hotel. But when the woman, Onush, who has a very long Greek last name, which I cannot for the life of me remember, and while I could probably track it down in the book, I have, as I always say, not prepared, so you're going to have to live without names. Onush is a Greek woman, and she's hiding from her husband, and it's very clear to Qwillerin when he discovers that she has made her way onto his property, little realizing that it is not basically public property, because of course when you have a large enough estate, people can wander onto it and not realize that it's not, you know, just woods not owned by anyone. And all she had really wanted to do was to, you know, sit beside the water and read, so he's hardly going to be offended at somebody who wants to sit by the water and read anyhow. And he talks to her, and you know, and she says that she wants to open a Greek restaurant, which he's always enthusiastic about. He's always enthusiastic about people with, you know, good food and stuff. And then the hotel explodes and she goes on the lam because she realizes that the explosion was somebody attempting to kill her. And so Qwillerin very quickly realizes that whatever was going on, she was on the run from someone trying to kill her, and that the explosion was trying to kill her. And there are several meetings with Andrew Brody, chief of police, during which Qwill sort of passes along this information sideways, that, she's on the run, that she was hiding from her husband, that, the explosion in the hotel was specifically because of her. And then a guy turns up dead, and our friend the beekeeper, who is, as I said, suffering from some cognitive difficulties because of injuries he got when he pitched off a boat while he was serving in the Navy, his friend dies of bee stings, and this guy is horribly traumatized, and it isn't until the end of the book that we find out that this guy, who died horribly of bee stings, actually deserved it because he was the one who, set the bomb and tried to murder his wife, his ex-wife, and also wound up killing a young woman who had done nothing to deserve it. A young woman who had only meant to go in there and sweep up some flowers that had made a mess on the floor of the room. And so, as with all of these books, the mystery isn't really the focus. I mean, Qwill spends a lot of time ruminating on it, but it kind of just circles around. Now, this is another book also that has moved into the slightly unusual and new territory for this series of Qwillerin not going anywhere. I've been saying over and over again since this series started that nearly all of these books have involved Qwillerin going somewhere, book after book, whether it's that he needs to move to a new place, whether it's that he chooses to move to a new place, whether it was even just that trip to Scotland. But it's always been in these that Qwill was going somewhere new from the last place. And now we've had a couple books in a row where Qwill just stays put. And I think part of this is Lilian Jackson Braun being reflective of the fact that Qwillerin is now solidly in his 50s. He's getting on in years. He is settling into a non-peripatetic life. He is settling into a life where he is not doing the work of a, gallivanting everywhere, world-traveling journalist. He is instead, living the life of a man who is getting older and has a settled life and a romantic interest who also has a very settled and sedentary life. And it doesn't really strike you, I think, until this second book, how very changed Qwillerin is from the start. Because at the start of this series, he was, while not young, he was much younger. I mean, okay, yes, 40s isn't old, but 40s isn't young anymore either. 40s is hitting solid middle age, but he was still hungry. He was still active. He was still going after things. And over time, as he has settled into his life in Pickaxe, he's slowed down, not mentally, but in terms of what he wants to do and where he wants to go. And this book and the last book, they really, these books, as you start to get further into the series, really reflect that change in him. And since I'm coming up on the end of my 15 minutes, I'm just going to stop there, and I will see all of you, whatever tiny number of you actually watch this, next week.